All right, hello. Welcome to the first official video podcast episode by the Shoe Snob. So, been wrapping my head around trying to figure out what should I talk about. So many subjects, so many things worth discussing. I'd probably, you try to figure out what's the one everybody wants to hear versus what do I feel is the most important. And so I've been writing ideas down. Some of you gave me some ideas, but in reality, and this probably won't surprise many of you that know me, the one that I feel is like the base problem to all problems is the question, what is a handmade shoe? Now, it's funny because some people think this is subjective, which, I mean, if we just look at English, it can't be, because a shoe made by hand is very objective statement. It's clear as day in those words. A shoe made by hand. It's not a shoe made by a machine being guided by hands. A shoe made by hand. Handmade shoe. But everybody loves to throw that term around like it means nothing, which not only do I find sad, but a gross misrepresentation of product and a gross miseducation to the average person. Now, I haven't written about this in a long time. I've harped on about this subject so many times on my blog, but lately I'm just backtracking. I harped on this subject so many times in my blog, and then I kind of just got desensitized to it. It's like it's the never-ending battle. The battle that no matter how hard I try, people just continue to use this phrase. So I kind of just said, whatever. All the brands use it. It's what you do, I guess. Like putting videos of your shoes being made on your website. All fluff. The guy hand clicking on the leather table, but in reality they use the laser machine. It's like, let's just get real. And so I kind of just said, whatever. Maybe I just chucked that one up. But it's been reintroduced to me because you would believe, but the reality is on a daily basis, I get people coming into this shop that you see behind me saying, wow, your shoes are beautiful. Are they handmade? And the first thing I say is no. They're made in a factory. And then some people just look at me with this weird look like, and it's like, yeah, there's a difference. Handmade and made in a factory are not the same. Factories by nature are production line institutions. They do large scale production. That's why it's called a factory. It's not called a workshop. The workshop, small level production with individuals who are there doing more workshop style craftsmanship. Factories are all about having big, large machines that are doing production line work from start to finish. So I constantly try to educate everybody who walks into this store and asks me that question. No, these are made in a factory by machines with a person who works the machine. But the person's not making the shoe. The person is just skilled at working the machine. But the machine is the one doing the actual work to the shoe. And I just don't know when it became so confusing, the distinction. Why is it not okay to be proud of just machine-made shoes, like well-made machine-made shoes by skilled factory workers. That's something to be proud of. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, a handmade shoe is a completely other subject and ballgame and beast and price. And, you know, I feel that word should be celebrated differently. You know, I've made a shoe by hand. It's not easy. It's challenging. Maybe that's why I have such a hard time with it. Maybe that's why most people really don't care, because they actually haven't done it. They don't know the blood, sweat, tears, pride, anger, everything you go through to finish that pair. Now, when you're a skilled bespoke shoemaker, you don't really go through those things anymore because you're skilled. But when you're learning that craft, it's a trial. It's a real test of patience, a test of will. You mess up like crazy. You cut your hands everywhere. You hammer your fingers. You stab yourself with the nails, with the knife. You cut all your fingers from the thread. You go through all kinds. And at the end, you sit there and you're like, wow, I finally finished. And you're proud of yourself. You're happy. You went through this trial to create this shoe. For then somebody to just go and say that $300 shoe is handmade, it's an insult. It's a slap in the face to the person that made that shoe by hand and put 20 to 40 hours, however many. When you're new, it probably takes closer to 40. When you're good, it's, you know, closer to 16 to 20. So, yeah, what is a handmade shoe? It's a shoe that was made by hand. Plain as English. Very simple. But why is this term just thrown around? Why do we feel the need to misrepresent our footwear? I mean, I get salesmen. I mean, the American salesman, Jesus. I used to be one. Only few things I ever said I was ashamed of later. Just blatant stupidity to make a sale. But I hated that, and I hated myself for that, because I think being dishonest and misrepresenting something is never the way forward. Your integrity is never worth more than that. Is worth less than that. Integrity should be worth more than your commission. Granted, I know a lot of salesmen don't agree with that. They'll do anything to make that buck, and they'll say any word to make that buck, and they do. And that's why I have people left and right asking me if these are handmade shoes, because some salesman told them that shoes sitting on shelves at retail shops in New York are handmade, when in fact there's very few shoes in retail shops in New York that have actual handmade shoes. Very few. So, yeah, this concept is important because it's a misrepresentation of reality, and it takes away from actual handmade shoes. This is why people on social media, you put a picture of a bespoke shoe and they ask the price and you tell them $3,000 and they scoff at you like nothing in the world should cost that. You know, yet they're happy to pay $1,000 for a piece of electronic equipment that got to replace every other year. You know, that's what's funny to me. You know, the iPhone that you got to replace, well, maybe not every year, but I know people who do, who get every single new one, you know what I mean? And then iPhone's so smart that if you don't replace it, they just eventually just stop making yours work. And so you have to get the new one. And you happily spend a lot of money on those, but you scoff at, you know, a handmade product that could last you potentially a lifetime if treated right. And so, you know, I think it's important, because when a shoe that's $200 from a shoe that's $2,000 all claim handmade, how can you tell the difference? How do you know why this one is handmade and why that one is handmade? So why does this one cost 1/10 of the price? What's the justification in buying the $2,000 one, you know? So I think it's important to educate the reality of not only phrases, but the craftsmanship that goes into something. I take pride that my shoes are made in a factory by skilled workers. I mean, that's what they are. the person who works the machine is important. You know, that's not to be taken away. Just because he's not doing it by hand doesn't mean they don't have value. They have great value. It's very difficult to find somebody who can last a shoe. Lasting is not easy. It may sound easy. If you've actually seen a lasting machine, they're very complex these days with this touch screen and 20 different little hands grabbing the leather around. You gotta know exactly how to work that screen. and there's these little levers that you push like psh, 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 and it's got like this air sound, and they're like every little push is grabbing a little bit more on this side, on that side, on that side, on this side. That takes skill to know at what point that shoe's now lasted properly. And it's hard to imagine by me just telling you this with my little visual things, but it's not easy, I'll tell you that. You know, the guy who's trimming the welt along the heel, another important job. Trimming, who's stitching the sole on from the welt to the sole. You got to get that stitch as close to the shoe as you can so that you can now trim down that welt as much as you can so you have a very beautiful fine silhouette. But the easy part is to just stitch it on without getting it close to the shoe. And then you got the thread sticking out, like the welt seams, the sole thread on the welt sticking out like 5-6 millimeters outside of the shoe. And then you trim down the sole and you got this big old protruding welt, and it looks horrible in my opinion. And so that person's job is important, and that's what you get from guys like at G&G who can cut that sole so fine that it almost looks like a Blake shoe, but not. So when we just say, oh, it's a handmade shoe, which it really isn't, you know, it's like taking away from these people's skill set. You know, their skill is working that machine, and that's not to be taken lightly. If it was, then we'd have way better shoes in this world consistently because, oh, these would be easy jobs, but they're not. Constant battle. That my factory tells me it's very hard to find new workers who are skilled. Imagine that in a shoemaking town. So, to me, again, representing your brand correctly is important. I don't know why people feel the need to say something's handmade that it's not. I don't take any pride in telling a lie. I don't take any pride in saying something that's not true. And again, I don't feel any shame telling somebody they're not handmade. Why? Why would I? And maybe because I really know what handmade actually means, and that's, you know, that's a level up here. And with a price point up there too, you know, with the exceptions. Obviously, there are handmade shoes now coming out of certain countries that are this price point here, and it's incredible. I don't think it's incredible in the sense I know how those prices get that low, and it's from the lack of pay that these people receive. Pardon the loud noises that you might hear in these videos, but I do have a shop with thin windows. So yeah, a handmade shoe. What is it? It was a shoe made by hand. Now you'll probably laugh because even within the realm of bespoke makers, I know makers that finish the heels with the machine, with a sanding machine. Finish the soles and the heels, you know, making that shape, right? Now to a real bespoke shoe snob who takes more pride in his craft than you can imagine, cuts all of that with a knife, with a shoemaker's knife. Now that guy will tell you that the other bespoke shoe who's trimming those heels with a sanding machine is not a real handmade shoe. So we have now levels of snobbery to get into what is really a handmade shoe, because technically speaking, if we wanted to be that snobbish, we would say that person is right. There should be no machines involved in a handmade shoe. You have a set of shoemaker's tools, And that's what you should be able to use to make the whole shoe. Now, I will say, because there will be the people who love to try to prove you wrong, that there is one exception to all of this rule, and that is stitching the upper. It makes no sense to stitch that upper by hand. Zero. In fact, it's probably the opposite. It's silly to do it. So this is the one part of the shoemaking process where the sewing machine was always acceptable in the blanket term of a handmade shoe. But that's the only one. It's the only machine used, and that I won't say, okay, it's still not a hand, but it is a very manual machine. It takes a lot of skills to work a sewing machine and work it well. I dare say it might be harder to use a sewing machine than to stitch by hand. Stitching by hand just takes forever. An upper, can you imagine? The shoes would be quadruple the price at that point. So yeah, a handmade shoe, at least in my eyes, if you want to sand the heel with the machine, so be it. I don't really take that down a peg, so to speak. It's a quicker, cheaper way to finish. Now I do know that some of the makers that do that also charge less, so at least they're not cheating the client. They're not representing that they made it fully handmade by cutting that heel stack by stack with a knife, because you actually pay for that. You pay for all the time, and when a shoemaker is charging you upwards of those prices, most likely they're doing that. You got your $2,000 bespoke shoes and you got your $5,000 bespoke shoes, and most likely the $2,000 one cutting some corners there, like doing the machines with the sanding the heels with the machine. And the $5,000 one is most likely doing everything with his set of shoemaking tools and a really sharp knife. So I don't know. To me, it also doesn't sound cool when you're like, yeah, my shoes are handmade. Who cares? I don't rate that in reality, because some of the most beautiful shoes in this world are just made in a factory, and they're more beautiful than many handmade shoes. So what does that even really mean? Why is that a point of pride? Factory working produces beautiful stuff. I'd rather say, yeah, look at my shoes, they're more beautiful than anything else, than, yeah, my shoes are handmade. So there's ugly garbage handmade shoes in the world, for sure. And there's amazing factory made shoes in the world. So again, I don't know, I don't see this fixation with throwing this term around like it really means something. Well made is well made. It's like the stamp made in Italy or made in England. 100 years ago, that meant something. Those countries took pride. They made great stuff. Now you can find garbage in both of those countries. So that stamp doesn't mean anything anymore on its own. Just like the word handmade. There's some rough looking stuff that's handmade. So yeah, I don't understand why people love to use it like it makes you sound better. It doesn't. If anything, I love to see the faces on the people when I tell them, no, it's not handmade. And in reality, it's even better. My shoes are supposedly so beautiful that you think they're handmade, but they're really not. We're great. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a compliment. I'm glad they look that beautiful to think that they're worth, 5 times more than they are. But no, they're just really decent looking, Goodyear welted shoes made in a factory in Spain by people who know how to work the machines. And I guess maybe the nice shines and the good lash shapes and the cool patterns, help. So anyways, I don't even know how long I've been going. Maybe this is a shorter than I thought podcast, which is probably for the better, because who wants to hear me ramble on for an hour? But again, a handmade shoe. Let us not throw that term around. Let us actually be educated and educate others. There's nothing wrong with factory-made shoes made by machines and workers who work the machines. But don't get it twisted. That's not a handmade shoe. That's a factory-produced shoe. And yeah, let's embrace that. And to all the brands out there that throw that term around, just stop. You're not helping the industry. You're hurting the industry. You may think you're helping yourself, but you're hurting the overall industry of shoes and the education of clients. And that's not good for anybody. Let us help each other by being honest with our terms, our videos showing our factory shoes. Let us all be honest, because at the end of the day, the honesty is going to trump the dishonesty in educating, and educating properly will build a greater community of enthusiasts for the welted shoe industry. So, what is a handmade shoe? Again, English will tell you, shoe made by hand. Hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast. I have lots of subjects to talk about. I might start with these very generic broad ones and get more fine-tuned with complex things. I know a lot of people want to know the difference between Goodyear welted and hand welted and what are the benefits, etc. That will be coming, I promise you. So do stay tuned. I hope you've enjoyed. You know, I'm not going to be as snobby and ranty as I used to be. Just going to keep it calm and tell the truth. It may not always be what you want to hear, but sometimes the truth hurts. I wish everybody a fantastic day. I thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will do my best to continue as much as I can with these episodes and trying to educate one viewer at a time. Thank you again. Please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, share how you feel. If you want to continue to leave me ideas, that's great. You know, my brain has a billion things going on at once, so sometimes I need help with ideas. And yes, do stay tuned for more. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.